I'm really sorry for it. So
Oh, it's
yes, so we
okay.
are just
It's
starting.
okay. The only, the only thing is that my
So
Cameroon colleagues will not be able to attend. They would have loved to be
yeah,
here.
but I can understand. I can, because they must be thinking that that will start at 5 p.m. as per Cameroon time, right?
Absolutely.
Mm. Yeah, but what
Mm-hmm.
we can do is I mean, we can share the link. We are just recording it on our YouTube channel, so we will just share the link, and the same link you can share with your colleagues or the people who just want to.
I think we should share the link.
Yeah,
I think it's a good idea to share the link so that they
yeah,
can be able to follow
Ye-
later.
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Sure. So now I request our host of this session, where is Isha, Isha, to start the session. So
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of BGMC Electronic Media Department of Mass Communication of Prestige Institute of Management and Research Indore, I, Isha Verma, welcome you all in our discussion forum for Media Monitor, in which we will discuss about various aspects of media, its impact and effect on individual and society. And the topic for today's discussion is community based strategies to fight against hate speech, misinformation, and disinformation for the hate free society. So, among we have our keynote speaker, Ms. Obah Rosaline, our panelists, Professor Bhavna Pathak, Professor Zubair Khan, Trisha Nimbalkar, Ashwin Matthew John, Mehak Jain, and Harsh Vijay. Along with that, I would like to welcome all the participants from the institution and who are from outside as well. With without you all, this session would not be that successful. Thank you so much for coming. Now, I really
Isha, your mic is muted actually.
so I have to begin from the start or what?
Not from the starting.
Okay, like I would like to invite Ms. Bhavna Pathak to please extend her warm greetings to our guest.
thank you so much, Isha, for providing me this opportunity to welcome our speaker of the day. And she is Miss Obah Rosaline with us. And we are really thankful to her that she gave this time. And, it would be a wonderful session, definitely. The reason is because as we all are struggling with the thing like fake information in the form of misinformation, disinformation. We all are so active on digital media platform, but we hardly know what are the digital etiquettes and how we can become good, netizen. So, how to do the peace building, how to control this hate speech and all. This session will be really relevant for all of you guys and those who are attending this session from outside as well. So, on behalf of Prestige Institute of Management and Research Indore, I welcome you, ma'am, for this wonderful session and for providing your time to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Before we initiate our session further, I would like to give a brief introduction about our keynote speaker. So, Ms. Obah Rosline is a consultant in peace journalism, conflict transformation, and do no harm. She holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree in journalism and mass communication from the University of Bu, Cameroon, with high proficiency and competence from strategic communication within the global perspective. With over 16 years of service, she has emerged into an outstanding and leading communication for change professional, peace activist, GBV expert, and an all round journalist. Having impacted public communication within the Cameroonian context to a more global context with her expertise, she is currently serving as president of Young African Women Congress Network, Cameroon chapter, and the national coordinator for Cameroon, the National Community Media Network. In these roles, she is demonstrated a greater zeal in strategic and impactful peace building and digital communication, following the very cancerous armed conflict in the two English speaking regions of Cameroon. This conflict has revolutionized institutional communication, especially with the advent of modern digital communication tools such as internet and social media. But she has been relentlessly in advocating for do no harm and no hate speech principles in communication. She is also the founder of executive director of the Center of Strategic Communication, Peace Building and Sustainable Development. She is the Vice National Coordinator of the Gender Data Network in Cameroon, certified fact checking fellow with Defy Hate Now. She believes that peace is possible, and to ensure this, she has dedicated her time to contribute to several capacity building workshops, training programs, seminars, and field activities reaching to youth, women, children, religious authorities, traditional authorities, and many other strategic community development stakeholders. Lastly, she is a good team player, and with her excellent team spirit, she is aware that together we can all build peaceful and model society in Cameroon again. So we welcome you, ma'am. Um, so, ma'am,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
So, ma'am, do you
I
believe
really
that?
want to be grateful for this opportunity to meet all of you. I want to thank
Ma'am, your network is lagging.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Now you are audible.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can I go ahead? Or you
Yeah.
had some
Of course.
questions?
Yeah. Of course.
How many minutes do I have?
Uh,
This
that,
session is for an hour. I mean, it's totally up to you whether first you want to do the presentation sort of, or you want to discuss, or right from the beginning you want it, interactive session. Like we are having students as our panelist. So
Okay.
yes,
I think I'm going to do the presentation, and then I want to believe that since we have the students, they can jot down
hmm,
whatever questions, and then we have a discussion at the end.
sure, 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 sure. Wonderful
Okay.
idea. Yeah.
sure.
All right. That's fine. So thank you, Professor, for this wonderful opportunity. I'm really happy to be in the midst of every one of you. It's not easy to be back here in Cameroon, and then you have this kind of session with close to 90 persons. Thank you so much. I will just go straight away. We are discussing today about community-based strategies to see how we can counter hate, misinformation and disinformation within the media, and even within our spaces, online and offline. And one thing we have to get out of this particular discussion and presentation today is that we all acquire practical tips for overcoming hate speech in media reporting and programming. And of course, the second one will be that we all acquire techniques for media-led initiatives to counter hate speech at community levels. So that basically those will be the two objectives of this particular presentation this afternoon by your Indian time. And I want to thank Defy Hate Now for giving me this opportunity. to be trained as a trainer to, of course, embark on this presentation. And before we get into the presentation, it's always very good to remind ourselves about some of the codes of conduct, because if we are talking about countering hate, misinformation, and disinformation, most of it begins online before it goes offline. And so it's good that sometimes we are reminded about some of the conduct that we can actually have within us as responsible citizens of the social media, in order to help us to equally have a responsible space offline. And the first thing is that if we are going into this presentation, definitely we should have qualities to be around transparency. We should also be responsible, we should be accurate, and we should be credible, of course, as media persons. And of course, we should be smart, respecting all regulations around the social media space. And of course, we should be fair and professional in whatever we set out to do on and offline. And especially online, what do we need to do? The first thing is that if we have a responsibility as media people on the online space, I think we are out to engage the community. The second thing is that we want to encourage outreach to new community circles. Today, I'm meeting another community in India, and I really want to reach and to get to know more people in a more responsible way. And of course,
I guess there's some network issue from her side there.
hello.
Yes, yes, you are now audible. Yep. I think there was some network issue.
Okay, so we are going to move straight away to some basic terms. And first of all, we are talking about misinformation and disinformation. And as media people, we shouldn't find ourselves around propagating these two keywords. And the first one is about misinformation, where sometimes we as media people, we as community persons, we spread false information without any intention to mislead. We just have information, we just decide to share, we have not fact checked, and we just want to share information, not because we want to hurt someone, but just because we want to share. But at the end of the day, we are misleading our community, our audience. And then, of course, disinformation is a deliberate, misleading, and biased content that we want to actually dish out there because we want to be manipulative in our content, in the approach that we want to use. We want to spread propaganda. And this is because we have that intention to hurt. We have something we want to drive out there in order to bring somebody down. So as media persons, the first thing is that we need to be very cautious against practices like this, because it definitely would not be too healthy for the community. Another aspect is that, first of all, when we look at disinformation and misinformation, they have some very key things that we need to consider. And one of the main things is that how do you even go about checking if what you are sharing is carrying some kind of information that is misleading? Have you even checked to read the headline if it's really factual? Have you been able to read the entire article of the story if it even matches with the headline? Have you equally made sure that your facts are right and your sources are right? Are your sources equally credible? And if they are not credible, why are you sharing? And then sometimes you search to see who else has covered that story, because you may just be the only one spreading the fake and the hate, you may not know. And of course, you also check to see if the images are what they claim to be, because we can just have images, sharing images all over the place, and we don't know that the images may just have been published to hurt or to mislead the community. And of course, do you see two sides or more to that article? You should equally have that in mind. And do you feel manipulated when you read such an article? You need to think about it. So those are the kind of things that we need to constantly set out to report. And of course, we need to think critically about the stories that we read. And we need to share only what is credible. And one of the important things that you have to do is, when you look at the source, what captured the original content? Have you checked after it? Because they can be talking about the president of Cameroon, and then they use, but rather the president of Tanzania. Have you been able to check if the person they are talking about reflects the content of the message? And where was that content captured? There are some pictures and stories that may have been published in 2019, and you bring it up in 2021, and you think that news is actually fresh. You need to actually fact check that content. And sometimes you also need to check out the motivation of the contents. You may just have been sharing content that somebody has actually prepared to manipulate the audience. So what is the driving message around the message that you want to share with others? So these are some of the things that actually in Cameroon, it is driving us towards peace journalism and conflict transformation, which of course is the key to do no harm approach in journalistic practice and peace building today. If we are talking about misinformation, if we are talking about fake news, disinformation, and even malinformation, it will tell you something, that we don't want to engage in things that harm the audience. We don't want to engage in things that practice the opposite of peace. Because as media persons, we are there to give people information that can help them to make informed choices. And exploring the critical issues around hate speech, and exploring strategies and techniques for mobilizing media to combat hate speech is absolutely very necessary today, because of hate on the internet. There is a lot of mis and disinformation on the internet that we carry out of the social media space and use it on our offline space, and that creates a lot of tension, that leads to violence, and that leads to conflict and open confrontations, where it leads to death, many people dying, many people losing property just because of the information that you've dished out there. So we need to be careful. And so creating a generalized wave of awareness and strengthening the competencies among journalists and other stakeholders will effectively play a positive social and democratic change wherever we find ourselves. So we should be very careful about what we publish. Now let us look at fake news online. For example, I always remind myself about Pope Francis' statement, who actually reminds me that sometimes the effectiveness of fake news is primarily due to the ability to mimic real news to seem plausible. Sometimes we see fake news and we see it so real, and we don't even check. We just go ahead to make it to go viral. And the viral and epidemic nature of false and manipulative news bouncing around the web and social media networks to the other makes discernment and recognition of the truth more difficult. So when we spread a lot of hate, a lot of fake news, misinformation, we now confuse our audience on what is actually true. We make it difficult for them to discern what is true from what is false. And secondly, the false is mostly believable, and every time it is most attractive. Most people want to be captured by fake news, and we do not want to attract people with fake news. And most people's attention are appealed by stereotypes and common social prejudices, and by exploiting instantaneous emotions like anxiety, contempt, anger, and even frustration. And so if we look at fake news too, it takes the same dimension with misinformation and disinformation. How can you even trace it? Have you still looked at your source? Is your source authentic? What is the editorial policy of your organ? Because sometimes you want to stick to the editorial policy of your organ, and then you forget what is responsible for you as an individual to do. How do you cite your sources? Sources which prefers to be anonymous. Those are these to hate and misinformation. So we need to call a spade a spade. Make sure that we identify our sources to make our stories more credible. And of course, which other local media is on a community? You publish a story. Yes. See if other local media organs are also publishing the story. Are your statistics the same like others? Because sometimes there may be an incident and one local media is reporting 10 people died and yours is reporting 100 people died. So you need to check to see if you are actually on the right track, and also check to see what commentaries are being made on your story. What are the commentaries? Are they derogatory? Are they depicting hate? You should be able to check on things like that. We have had cases in Cameroon of newspapers that have been faked. They take the front page stories. For example, we have the ongoing crisis in Cameroon now. They take front page stories of different credible newspapers in Cameroon. They use it to suit their whims and publish propaganda and publish articles that depict a lot of hate, that incite division. And many people just go along with the sharing and share, and you can imagine sharing this kind of a fake newspaper that puts two parties at loggerheads. And it is very dangerous because it actually will cause the other party to fight back. So we should be able to check if sometimes whatever we are sharing, if you have your newspaper, check equally to make sure that at some point in time, it is not being duplicated in a negative sense to suit the whims of those who are doing such an illegal practice. And so now let us look at the impact and character of fake news. Fake news is intended to distort information, to misinform the public and mislead the public opinion. And fake news is equally propaganda to push information through which may discomfort another person. It gets worse when fake news accelerates and affects the way individuals interpret daily developments. And of course, it is propaganda driven by citizen journalism and cable news organs. We should be very careful about what we spread out there as fake news. It spreads like wildfire. Fake news it has some kind of a thin line with hate speech. And hate speech is like any speech in writing or non-verbal communication that attacks, threatens, and insults a person or group on the basis of their origin, ethnicity, color, religion, gender, identity, sexual orientation, and of course, someone's disability. And just like hate speech, on the one hand, is a form of fake news. Nobody will want to just spread hate speech like that. Hate speech has a mission, and it is never real news. It is never news that has truth in it. And it's also intended to hurt and injure persons at which it is targeted. And it is, of course, dehumanizing at times and plays down on the dignity of a person or group of persons. And of course, we should recognize that hate news or hate speech is most often fake news. And so if we have to look at hate speech, it tells us one thing. It is cruel. It has derogatory language. And it is the rippling effect equally has some kind of creating division and violence around it. And we don't just talk about fake news, hate speech, without having to trace it from somewhere. It is coming from the pyramid of hate. If it is around fake and hate, it is coming from a pyramid of hate where that pyramid generates from, let's say, a zero level to a level where you end with genocide. And let me take on the different stages of hate that will cause someone to go out there to spread propaganda that leads to a final stage, which is genocide. The first thing is that we start living with biases. We start living with stereotypes. We start living with insensitive remarks between one another. And sometimes we start using belittling jokes with one another. And sometimes our language is not inclusive. We use a lot of bias, and then we accept negative information, and we also try to screen out positive information. And when we do all of this, it takes us to another stage where we start practicing individual acts of prejudice. And it leads us to bullying. It leads us to ridiculing one another. It leads us to name calling. We start calling us ourselves with some kind of terrible names that dehumanizes one another. We start embarking on social avoidance. I don't want to see you. I don't want to associate with you because I hate you. And then, of course, sometimes we want to dehumanize another party because of different reasons. He or she is not white like me or black like me. He or she is not from the same religion or background like me. And so we start causing and upholding prejudice. And this leads us to discrimination. And when we embark on discrimination, it stems from economic, employment, educational, political, and even housing discrimination. We do not want to see another person as having the same needs that have to be met like ours. We see another person like an underprivileged person, and we do not want to associate with them. We think that we merit more than others. And so we want to discriminate against our fellow brothers and sisters. And so this leads us now to bias-motivated violence. And in this case, it takes place in two different forms. At the individual level, we see cases of murder, rape, assault, and threats. That is the stage whereby hate has gone to another level. And for the community section, it actually affects the community because all of these from the individual level takes us to acts around arson, terrorism, vandalism, and also desecration. And when we find all of this, it takes us to another stage because it keeps boiling from one stage to the other, and it leads us to the last stage, which is genocide. We don't care whatever happens to our brother or sister, because we don't find anything around like empathy. Like, if this is happening to this person, how will I feel if it happens to me? And so this act now gets to a stage where we want to extinct an entire generation or a people because they are not like us. And so in this way, it makes us to be very, very discriminatory. It makes us to be very hateful of one another. And it makes us to not even preach anything that is closer to and even unity around a community. And so there is one thing we always want to do around this bold step when it comes to what we can do as media people to teach others. The first thing is that we need to always think before we click. Think before you click. Because any information that you have, you think that you want to share, always think of the consequences before you even click the share button, because you are going to either build up or you destroy forever. So we need to be very conscious, because this aspect of thinking before we click encourages citizens to take hate speech. We need to have more conversations on these issues at home, in school, at the workplace. And each person has the obligation to use the social media for reporting hate speech and misinformation online. And we need to work towards having a hate-free world. And this is taking me now to this. What are some of the strategies that we can actually take for countering hate, misinformation, and disinformation within the media space, be it social media or even our newsrooms, when it comes to us as media professionals? The first thing is that every journalist, every media person, every community leader needs to do something in the face of hatred. We need to do something. You can't sit quiet. You can't, for example, somebody comes on your online space and the person depicts elements of hate through text, and then you say, I will block this person. I will never speak to this person. We as media persons, we have that mandate to make sure that we use that one person to educate others. Don't block the person. Let that person understand that this word you are using is tantamount to creating total violence in this space and out of this space. And what you will equally do is to make sure that if that person has spread information that is false, try to make everything possible to debunk that information by publishing the right information. In this way, you are using your space to conscientize the person spreading the hate. Acting can involve offering also your media space for anti-hate campaigns, using your influence to mobilize for such campaigns. What do I mean by this? We can all have our programs. What space are you giving in order to ensure that you have more programs that actually encourage anti-hate, anti-fake, and also encouraging people to always stay or rise above fake, misinformation, and disinformation? You should have content on your media house or on your news, online media or offline media, to see how you can encourage anti-hate campaigns, service announcements. You can do panel discussions, and of course magazine programs that in different local languages that can encourage the community to counter or to join in the fight against hate within the on and offline space. Also, as media practitioners, we should reach out to allies such as churches, schools, clubs, and other civic groups to create or join coalitions to get involved. We cannot do it alone. We have to work in synergy with other groups that are also fighting against hate speech, misinformation, and disinformation. In Cameroon, we have Defy Hate Now, that is actually championing the fight against hate speech, misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. And they are working with a lot of institutions in Cameroon to see how they can partner together to counter hate speech at every level possible. So we need to, as media persons, harness our efforts with other organizations, with other sectors of the country, like the educational sector, the health sector, and even the local community where you reside. Get them involved so that they can be able to partner with you in order to fight against hate speech. Another aspect is that as media persons, when you also see victims who have suffered as a result of hate speech, online or offline, you need to offer them victim support by informing the public about where to seek help. Remember that the community depends on us, especially for the referral path systems. Where do we need to go to when it has to do with hate speech that has actually affected an individual or a group of persons? We can be able to use our online space to let them know that honestly, at this point, we need to be able to go to this sector and this sector. I wouldn't know what or the referral path systems in India, but I'm sure we have departments and institutions that take charge of those who propagate hate crimes and hate speeches in the community. So as media persons, let us use our microphones, our pens, and our papers to offer victim support to those who have actually been victims of hate speech. And then, of course, we need to ensure that our news outlets cover hate crimes and groups. Yes, why do I say so? I say so because we need to follow up, because if you don't have that mandate as a media person to cover hate crimes and groups, you may not even know what is on the ground to report or to equally counter or debunk as hate speech. But this is what you need to do. Do not kill the messenger, but rather consider the hate news as a wake-up call that reveals tension in the community. And therefore, you attack the problem, attack the issue, and don't attack the person. So that in that case, you are actually out to encourage community to take themselves off the hate message, and you try to use that as an opportunity to educate perpetrators of hate crimes. There are also some media persons and media houses, especially partisan media houses, political media houses that are politically inclined, that use their media space to propagate hate speech, to misinform the public. Sometimes they equally embark on malinformation because they want to pull down their opponents in order to rise. So in this case, we do not have to be silent. Always make sure that you are able to name a person from your media house to be the main contact person for the community, so that it can be able to help you to see how you can be able to detect any hate speech content before it even goes out. In your media house, you can have health reporters, you can have reporters who do economic news, some environment. Why not also have a reporter who also checks after information that takes away misinformation, that actually takes slots that target awareness against hate. I think that will help in actually taking off hate or anything that is not credible within your media or newsroom. And then ensure that you always attend public events focused on countering hate, so that in that way you get more resources, and then you also get more informed, and you also participate to be part and parcel of any event that has to counter hate. And in this way, the more people who join together in public events to counter hate, the more we have healthy spaces in our community. So you do not, the issue is that you cannot do it alone. Like I've said earlier, you need to put forces with others in order to counter hate. And of course, I know that sometimes we may not have these hate news items coming up. So we as media persons, we need to also propose human interest stories. For example, like the impact of hate on a community. Propose human interest stories that give you healthy stories around fighting against hate speech. In that way, you can be able to embark on investigative stories. You can be able to do some kind of storytelling stories that can raise the consciousness of the community when it comes to fighting against hate. And of course, reporters, editors, and publishers should be aware of hate groups and their impacts on victims and communities. For example, in Cameroon, just for example, the ongoing crisis, just the symbol of the flags of the two parties in question, since we have two parties in conflict, one that wants independence and one that wants one an indivisible Cameroon, the other party does not want to see the other person's flag. So when you are in a region where you see just one flag, it already starts depicting hate, because they start looking at that flag in that particular space and start looking at you as the enemy. So already start looking at things that may actually be shown into a particular space, and it already depicts hate. There are so many symbols that can be able to incite violence. So stay away from this kind of hate groups and their symbols. When you bring them on your magazine platforms, you're already helping them to push their agenda forward. So try to invite as much as possible guests on your panel that will encourage your content to be hate-free. And of course, another aspect is that we need to get editorial writers and columnists to take a stand against hate speech. I am talking here, I have 2 to 3 newspapers in Cameroon where my focus is against hate, and my focus is against violence, and my focus is for peace building and non-violence. So I do that every day with the Lone Daily newspaper in Cameroon and other bi-weekly newspapers. So I think we can also, in our different platforms, use this space. We have newspapers, of course, in India. We have slots on the radio and TV that we can take as columnists and as journalists to see how we can take stance against hate and rather try to propagate the opposite. And of course, do not hold debates with hate group members on conflict-driven talk shows or public forums. And mind you that your presence lends them legitimacy and more publicity. So the more you invite them to your platform, they think that what they are doing to encourage hate is more legal, and you give them more fame and publicity when you invite hate groups on your programs. And they always use code words to cover their beliefs, and they misinterpret history and religious verses in a manner that may be difficult to counter during a live program. So you should take notes, because you will not understand those coded words. And sometimes they will use even the Bible, they will use even some kind of religious verses to change the whole contents to suit their whims. And at the end of the day, since it's a live program, it's already gone on air and you have nothing to do. And one thing in that case, if you actually will not even depict if this person will say this hurt or hate on air, I think you as the anchor, you should be able to educate immediately after the person utters any word that depicts hate. Don't just continue to the next question as if nothing happens. You need to educate the person and to also let the person and the audience know that at some point in time, we need to consider the consequences of what we say on air, because we are like the mirror to society. We are like leaders whom society looks up to actually encourage the growth and peace of every community. And so another issue is countering tribalized hate speech through education on media ethics, with focus on the rights and freedom of journalists and their role in creating and promoting peaceful societies is very important. In our own space, we should not forget that we also have that responsibility to check our media ethics every now and then to see if we are on track, because we might just be the ones propagating the hate through the words and images that we use. Sometimes we can also identify hate speech and counteract the hate speech messages. We should be kind enough to help community by making sure that what we dish out there should already pass through your editorial desk before you dish it out, because the moment it goes out, it already paints a picture of your media house as one that is propagating hate. So of course, you need to have somebody in your editorial room who actually checks your content before it goes out, because the moment it goes out, the consequences will not only be on the community, but the reputation and the image of your media house and the anchor at that particular time, especially the program, will be at stake. And so one thing we may have to do is to encourage conflict-sensitive reporting and multicultural awareness campaigns on our various media outlets. We can also do this just through, like I said earlier, public service announcements. And then, of course, some of us have a media offline and online, where we can use even the online space to carry out some of these multicultural awareness campaigns against hate. When they see media doing this, of course, they will definitely be sending away indirectly anybody that wants to come and use your media for hate campaigns. So you will definitely just be telling somebody who has ulterior motives to just know that your media is not ready for anything closer to hate. And so conflict-sensitive reporting will definitely tell you that you will not be out there to put them versus us, but you will be out there to dispel the us against them fallacy. So you will not want to pit two parties against each other. You want a win-win situation. And a win-win situation will help you not to use derogatory language, victimizing language, and images that would definitely just add more fuel to the already existing flames. And of course, do not target the author, target the statements, and refute false claims where possible with facts, and always refer to reliable sources. so that in the case of any issue, you can be able to tag your contents to reliable sources. Another issue is express disbelief and displeasure, but do not get involved in pointless is so arguments and mutual mudslinging and insults. There are so many persons who may want to throw it back at us, who may want to tempt us to get into arguments that may get us emotional, and we start throwing insults. As community media, as persons who are out there to build community, don't be pushed to the world. Don't be pushed to the world to the extent that you now start adding your emotions and start fighting back, using words that hurt, using words that are hateful, because it may just now start imaging the kind of person you are. And anyone who is out there as a community media person is a peace journalist. And as a peace journalist, you will spend your time to educate yourself about hate campaigns and to determine if a hate group is involved, research their symbols and agenda, so that each time you want to take anybody on air as your resource person, you should be able to understand that there is a difference between a hate crime and a biased incident. You will also be able to determine if this person is worth a resource person that can dish out something that is going to help society to be better than you met them. And so journalists and media persons, as well as professionals, must exercise ethical and professional standards in what we call efforts towards dispelling hate journalism. And this you can do by writing articles, air programs, and even speak with people without taking sides. Because there are times where even our reports are one-sided. And when they are one-sided and it is read out there, it causes conflict. And when it causes conflict, people use those articles and start preaching hate. So you may want to embark on investigative and objective articles that would definitely have words, images that come to build and not to destroy, not to incite hate in any form. That is our responsibility. And so we can do all we can as media persons to even regulate the social media. And we can do it through education on media laws and ethics. We have a lot of citizen journalists on the internet, and so we should be very careful. And one thing I should say is hate speech remains largely invisible because the victims do not know where to report and do not even understand that they are victims of hate speech. And so we still have that mandate to educate people on what hate speech is and what hate speech is not. Because we may just find ourselves as victims, but we may not even know. So we need to have that sense of responsibility to take the lead in educating the masses. And ending impunity against hate crimes can be done through setting up of monitoring and evaluation units in our newsrooms for monitoring hate speech trends. Do we have it in our newsrooms? Then we need to have one or two persons or even a whole unit to monitor and evaluate whatever is in our newsroom in terms of news and program contents. When we monitor and evaluate, definitely the outcome will always be something responsible and edible for the community. And of course, when you do this, you compile reports from the monitoring units and bring these to the attention of key institutions and civil society. Of course, like I said earlier, we don't work as an island. So we need to from time to time, see how we can be able to work with others. When you get all of these trademarks in your newsrooms, some kind of tips that you've gathered, you need to come together in a close group and with other civil society members, and you discuss this and look for a way forward. And one thing I must say, drawing inspiration from Defy Hate Now, is that you and I may not promote violence against or directly attack or threaten other people on the basis of their race, ethnicity, national origin, especially our gender identity, disability, and disease. You may not make threats of violence or promote violence. And so this is what you may just have to do as a media person as well, and even a community person. If you find any hate speech online, the first thing is that you need to take a screenshot of the potential hate speech on Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, or video, including the comments as evidence in case there is a potential legal action to be taken. And do not respond or get drawn into inflammatory conversations. If you do, you just make yourself one of the perpetrators of hate speech. If you do respond to published comments that you may consider unfair, always be accurate and professional. Remember to be authentic, constructive, and of course, respectful, no matter what blows you receive while educating your community, online or offline. You need to stay polite in tone and respectful of individuals' opinions, especially when discussions become heated. Show consideration for other people's privacy. And for media persons, we need to counter dangerous speech. Counter hate speech is any direct response to dangerous. Counter speech is any direct response to dangerous speech which seeks to undermine it. And violence may be prevented by interfering with dangerous speech in several ways. I cite just 3. You can do it by inhibiting the speech. And then the second thing, you can do it by limiting its dissemination. And the third thing is by undermining the credibility of the speaker. And the most direct way is to have a positive effect on the speaker, convincing him or her to stop speaking dangerously now and in the future. It can also succeed by having an impact on the audience, communicating norms that make dangerous speech socially unacceptable, or by inculcating the audience, or even making them to uphold any speech that may actually help in countering hate. And so, to conclude, I have just 3 things that we may have to take with us as media persons. The first thing is that people who combating hate speech should not just be handled as a fill-in subject, but should be an issue of prime concern. The second thing is that if the media shies away from hate speech and handles it lightly, the society shall be divided, violence will become a normalcy. So being such a tool for education, the media must keep the fight against hate speech a daily routine, exploiting all options possible to end hate speech, and must never, our media houses must never be a medium used by lovers of hate to antagonize society. And the last one is that in a world where technology is evolving and there are open sources with tools that can be used by media person to fact check, it is important for us as media person to embrace basic information verification tools in order to wage a steady and concrete war against fake news, hate speech, misinformation, disinformation, and of course, malinformation. In this way, we shall be contributing our own little quarter in order to counter hate speech online and offline. Thank you very much. I think for now, that is all what I prepared for us. We can always embark on some discussion at this point. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you
And
so
thank
much.
you.
It was very enlightening. You told us so many things, and how to counter fake information and all, and how responsible I mean, this responsibility basically society has to take. So it was a wonderful session. Now I'll request Aisha to yes, I mean, if there, I mean, are questions from the panelists, you people can ask to ma'am. Yeah, you may proceed.
Ma'am? Okay. A very good morning, ma'am. Ma'am, do you believe that social media platforms have been unable to improve their systems on the basis what is considered as hate speech and which in turn gives rise to hate speech? Do you think they have made some certain proper regulations to control the propagation of hate speeches?
Sorry, I didn't get my network. My line was breaking. Can you take it all over, please?
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, I wanted to ask, do you think social media sites have played a responsible role in curbing the propagation of hate speeches?
I think they have not been able to an extent. I think some sites have been able to take action when only if it is reported, because they cannot just, sometimes they don't just do it automatically without report. So for us, like for example in Cameroon, when we depict hate speech, we invite many of us to do this, to report that same thing, so that the weight is heavier, so that the particular site takes action. But that the sites just take action automatically. They've not been doing quite much. And so I think we need to also see what we can do in order to get to the service providers of those sites to depict hate and automatically just take action, rather than waiting for people to report before action is taken. Sometimes it is reported and the sites determine what to take as hate speech. And then sometimes some people report things that are not hate speech, and some accounts are taken off. And for example, I take the case of Cameroon, where you have the conflict. And the government that has all the power and resources gets directly to maybe the service provider of a certain site. And then, of course, if they discover that, okay, what the public has been telling the whole world about the crisis, which is true to the whole world, and the best thing the government has to do is to go to that service provider and start getting to some of the media influencers, and their accounts are shut down. I think sometimes it's unhealthy, because some of these service providers on the online space are not being fair, because they shut down the truth, and then they don't even do what is expected when it comes to the real hate speech. So I think sometimes we need to even come up with something like raising the awareness of these service providers to understand that automatically they need to act and get off hate speech online than wait for people to report. Because sometimes we even took like 3 weeks to keep reporting on the same thing, and they don't even pull the stuff down. So we need to keep on encouraging our own individual efforts, putting your individual efforts to see how we can counter hate speech online, misinformation, disinformation online, out of which we need to also raise the consciousness of the service providers to also play their own role in regulating their sites, because a lot too is being allowed out there in the name of giving freedom for people to exercise their citizen journalism citizen journalism I don't know, efforts or something. So I think you are very correct with that question, because very few efforts are being done by social media service providers to really automatically tone down on the level of hate. But that notwithstanding, we should not leave it just at them, but we should also, at our individual levels, try to use our social media spaces to raise their consciousness. Sometimes we use the right hashtags that gets directly to so that they can be able to see that their sites, again, we have raised the consciousness of water in Cameroon by using use the right hashtags on Twitter and on Facebook. A campaign, or you write, these providers will sit up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am,
We have
I have one question, ma'am. Ma'am, do you believe that the implementation of media literacy and media ethics in educational institutions can help in curbing hate speeches and misinformation?
Yeah, I think, thank you very much for that question. I think if we educate ourselves about our media deontology and ethics, is also going to help us from this other end. This one is now for media persons, because there are many of us who have become partisan in nature. There are many of us who report because somebody has given us some heavy envelope. I talk about the case of Cameroon. And when we receive those heavy envelopes, it definitely would actually take off that sense of responsibility from us, because we'll be reporting the agenda of that politician, of that elite, or of that stakeholder that has given us an article to publish that accompanies a heavy envelope. So we need to stay within our ethics. And when we stay within our ethics, it will definitely help us too, as media persons, stay off any tendencies that would encourage reporting that will go against our ethics. For example, if you do a one-sided story, it tells me that you're going against your ethics. What does a one-sided story do? It already makes you to have a story that is not objective. It makes somebody to know that there is some agenda behind your content. There is either a propaganda that you want to promote. So we need to stay along the lines of our ethics and deontology, whether brown envelopes or not, because we don't have to even be influenced by anybody. But the tendency today is that because of our condition, I give the case of Cameroon, a lot of us have gone out of the track of our media ethics. And this is causing many of us to now be journalists who are influenced by money to dish out anything, not caring about the consequences. Whoever is dying because of your report, but because your money is in your pocket, you don't care. So there are lots of us who are derailing from the course. And so if we are standing on track, that we are transparent, we are objective, we are responsible, nobody can influence us no matter how powerful or wealthy you are, I think is going to help us to work within the tenets of our journalism profession. So I think it can go a long way to encourage a hate-free society, because we will not be tempted to dish out what is not healthy for the community. It's the same like you are doing some kind of an interview and somebody uses derogatory words, and you know that those words are going to incite more violence, and you go ahead to dish out that content, you already know why you are doing that. And because you are doing so, and you know that it is not part of the ethics of the profession, it already makes you a perpetrator of hate. What if you go the other way around? You will definitely consider the consequences of your reporting. You will definitely consider the ethics by which you stand on. And in this way, you will not get towards a hate-free content. So this is virtually what I can say. It's the same like publishing. For us in Cameroon, I belong to the Cameroon Community Media Network, where we are guided by peace journalism principles. And these principles would definitely will not even be a sister or brother to hate, to violence. So we always check our work, we check the consequences before we dish it out. So if you are a peace journalist, a community media person, you definitely are already somebody who will never be a party to hate. You will never display images that depict hate. There are times whereby, for us as peace journalists, you find a minor in a pool of blood, and you think that publishing it in your newspaper will make you like the best professional on earth. No, you're already inciting violence and hate, because depicting such a scenario in your newspaper already tells that family of that minor that it is time for us to strike back. You just need to get a picture of that minor not in that pool of blood, but you will still tell the story. But in a pool of blood, you are telling that child, you're telling that child's family that what has been done to you is not fair. In short, even mentally and psychologically, you are torturing the family of that minor. The same applies to maybe a conflict incident where, for example, in Cameroon, there was a massacre that took place, and over 33 youths, young people, were murdered in cold blood. And can you imagine that some media organs, a few, just two or three media network, they publish that on their newspapers, and can you imagine that those articles depicted elements of like these 33 persons that have died, they are coming from they allege that their killers are coming from the nearby village, and they shot those people in the pool of blood. And what happened later? The people who published that article had to see the nearby village, the line that had to do with the perpetrators coming from the nearby village as the perpetrators of that crime. And do you know what happened next? The next attack took place in that village, in the nearby village. And the village where that happens, where the people said, you killed our 33 youths, we are going to wipe off your own village. So these are the kind of things that we say it is very unhealthy. Yes, you can report it, but elements like that just come in to incite more violence. You can report that something like that happened without publishing 33 people in a pool of blood. That is very insensitive, because you are just too close to the warmongers who murdered those 33 youths in cold blood. So we as media people, we need to be very conscious on what we dish out there. The words that we use, just one word is capable of wiping a whole generation. For example, in Cameroon today, with the Anglophone crisis plaguing the northwest and southwest regions, the Anglophone part of Cameroon, there are some words that already are just creating division in Cameroon. Just calling somebody a terrorist, and then at the same time, you want dialogue to happen. There are two different things. How can you invite somebody, because dialogue cannot happen without the two parties sitting at table to discuss frankly. And when you're already calling another, this party is calling the other one a terrorist, a cockroach, a graffiti with some kind of terrible names, you're already telling them that they are not even your brother or sister. There is no need for us to sit at table to talk. And when they use such words, do we as media persons help them to also use those words on our media space? Because if you are somebody who does not want to propagate hate, I think those words should not be used on your media space. But there are persons who use them on their media space and they go ahead to propagate hate. So these are the things that we contribute with just a few words that we add within the lines of our reporting that come in to help two parties not to even solve their conflicts. We rather help them to bring up new words that divide them more. So these are some of the things we are supposed to be responsible, and we have that civic responsibility in every community to dish out contents that will definitely ensure a peaceful and healthy society. But rather, what some of us do is the opposite. And this tarnishes the image of our ethics. So we need to be very conscious because it plays a whole lot on hate speech in whatever space where we find ourselves. I hope that is okay. Thank you.
I have a question. Actually, I'm eager to know about the community media of Cameroon. I mean, whether especially I'm talking about the community radio, like whether the community radio is free from the government control, and what is the role of community radio in disseminating the communal harmony and peace building over there.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor. I think one thing that stands out from the Cameroon community media is that we have a lot of things that have actually helped us to stay off any threats, intimidation from the states, no matter how heated even the crisis that is ongoing in Cameroon is looking like. So one thing is that we have just two objectives that are pregnant within our community media space, especially within the network. The Cameroon Community Media Network is made up of over 400 media organs, media individuals, and of course, civil society organizations working in the domain of peace building and conflict transformation, looking at the humanitarian aspects. And of course, our network is focused on making sure that our stories are solution oriented. Our stories are reported are people oriented. Reason why our watch phrase is 90% community and 10% media. And of course, our motto is we stand for peace. So all what we do, our microphone goes to 90% of the community. And that community is not the state, it's not the big the politicians. Our microphone goes to the common man. We tell the stories of the common man, and we try to make sure that we apply bottom-top approaches in our reporting. And this implies that we want to see the common man bring out their plight themselves, because when they do tell their stories, the people, the stakeholders believe them more. But when we take our microphones and talk only to the big persons in power, it definitely will not make any sense, because the real plight of the people is supposed to be recounted by the common man. And so our stories are focused on local realities. And we work around the main peace journalism tenet, which is around making sure that the common man's voice is given a bigger space on our platform. And we use peace journalism tenets, which has to do with checking out words and images that would definitely not cause any harm or further injury to any conflict situation that we find. Reason why, with the number or the increasing rates of kidnaps, arrest, and detention in Cameroon, we have not had any case of a community media network member in Cameroon that has actually been arrested and detained or kidnapped because he or she used words or images that set out to add more flames to the already existing fire. And of course, we report to make sure that we don't add more to that conflict. How we can bring both parties together, which is what we practice in the community. Raise the consciousness that each time you report the consequences of your reporting, we've been able that we've been existing. Our stories, we have produced content of productions that center around.
There's voice lagging, or I guess some network issue from ma'am's side.
कितना देर
जस्ट वेट कर रहे हैं सर, आ जाए वो, तो उसके बाद फिर मैं ईशा को बोल दूंगी टू सबमिट अप.
जी जी
मेरे ख्याल से कुछ नेटवर्क इशू हुआ है. जितने भी एशियन अफ्रीकन कंट्रीज हैं, वी ऑल स्ट्रगल विद दिस नेटवर्क इशू. So that is only for the name that we are getting 4G speed, 5G speed. I mean, forget about it. It's a kind of digital divide we are struggling with always. So let's just wait for her. I mean, let her come, and then Isha.
Can you get?
Yeah, yes,
I'm back.
yes. I said I was just talking to my students. I was saying that there is a digital divide. Forget, like, I mean, we are being always uh, convey that we are having 4G speed, 5G speed, but we are struggling with the network issue.
Yeah, that's
So
true. It's not easy here. The network here is not really strong.
yes, so we are struggling.
Okay.
So yes, now I'll request
Yes.
Isha to kindly sum up the session. It was a wonderful session. It was, I must say, it was a mind-boggling session. It was a very good discussion, and so many things and so many takeaways are there for students, for us from this session. So, Isha,
Thank you
over to
so
you.
much, ma'am, for giving us your precious and valuable time. Now I would like to invite Professor Bhavna, ma'am, to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you so much, Isha. So, on behalf of Prestige Institute of Management and Research Indore and this BAJMC Electronic Media Department of Prestige, I would like to thank you, ma'am, for giving your valuable time to us and sharing your experience with us and sharing about the Cameroon community media, which is working for peace building, which is working for communal harmony and a kind of social justice through that. So it was a wonderful session, and as I said, that so many takeaways are there from this session to all of us. So on behalf of Prestige, I would like to thank all participants as well, all panelists, and to our host Isha, to my colleague Professor Zubair Khan sir, and to Oba Rosaline ma'am for this wonderful session. Thanks to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
ma'am.
Thank
Thank
you
you so
so
much,
much.
ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye,
Bye,
ma'am.
ma'am. Have a nice day ahead.
Bye.